The sun peeked out from behind drifting clouds as Jalen Green, a 16-year-old black teen, strolled through the downtown district with a small folded paper in his hand. It was his summer reading list, 6 books his AP English teacher had promised would challenge their thinking and deepen their perspective. Jalen took the assignment seriously. He always did. He wore a navy hoodie, clean jeans, and spotless sneakers, casual, comfortable, nothing flashy. His earbuds hung around his neck, though he wasn't listening to anything now. He had looked up this store online, Daly's Book Nook, known for its rare finds and quiet atmosphere. It wasn't far from City Hall, nestled between a tea shop and an old tailor. He was excited. This was the kind of place he imagined he'd find a worn, annotated copy of To Kill a Mockingbird or Their Eyes Were Watching God. As he reached for the door, he barely noticed the man standing just inside, a white man in his late 50s with thinning gray hair, a pressed sweater vest, and a name tag that read Mr. Daly, owner. But before Jalen's fingers even grazed the handle, the door didn't open. Instead, it was pushed shut from the inside. Jalen blinked, confused. Mr. Daly opened the door only a few inches, just enough to step halfway into the frame and block entry. "Can I help you with something?" he asked curtly, eyes scanning Jalen's face with narrowed caution. "I was just coming in to look for some books," Jalen said, lifting the folded list slightly. "For school." Daly's lips tightened. "We've had issues lately," he said vaguely. "Can't let just anyone wander around. Maybe try the library on 8th Street. Jalen stared for a moment. "I'm not here to cause trouble." Daly raised a hand. "I'm sure you're not, son. But you understand, we have regulars. It's a quiet place." Jalen's heart sank. He'd seen this kind of interaction before, on videos, in stories his dad told him, sometimes at school. But this was the first time it happened to him so directly. So plainly. He nodded once, slowly folded the paper in his hand, and turned away without another word. As he walked back toward the street, he didn't look back. He didn't need to. He already knew what he wasn't supposed to see. The bell above the door gave a final jingle as Jalen disappeared down the sidewalk, the glass reflecting the subtle shame Mr. Daly refused to feel. He stood for a second longer in the doorway, adjusting his sweater vest, before casually walking back to the counter like nothing had happened. But not everyone inside the shop was so quick to return to normal. In the cozy reading nook near the window, an older white woman named Linda, a longtime regular, looked up from her knitting. She had seen the boy's face, seen his hand reach for the door, and how the owner's hand had pressed it closed. Her friend, seated beside her with a tea-stained copy of Jane Austen, leaned closer. "Did you see that?" Linda nodded slowly. He didn't even give the kid a chance. Behind a nearby shelf, a young college student named Priya, who was flipping through a poetry collection, overheard it too. Her eyes followed Mr. Daly as he resumed organizing the cash drawer, humming softly as if to drown out the room's new silence. She turned toward the counter. "Hey, Mr. Daly," she called gently, raising her voice just enough. "That boy, he looked like he had a book list. School stuff. Why didn't you let him in?" Daly glanced up. "Better safe than sorry," he said lightly. "We've had some shoplifting incidents this month. You know how it is." Priya's expression hardened slightly. "You didn't even ask his name." Daly didn't respond. He went back to his drawer. At the back of the store, Maya, the store's only part-time employee, stood frozen behind a stack of boxes. She was 19, fresh out of high school, working weekends to save for community college. She had seen the whole thing. Maya wasn't surprised. This wasn't the first time she'd seen Mr. Daly glance over his glasses a little too long when certain kids came in. Once, he'd followed 2 Latino teens around the non-fiction aisle under the guise of tidying. Another time, he made a black woman leave her tote at the counter while white customers carried full handbags without question. But this time felt different. The boy hadn't even crossed the threshold. He'd simply been denied. For Maya, the smell of old books and the warmth of the reading lights didn't feel so comforting anymore. She glanced toward the front door, as if wishing she had spoken up, even just to ask the boy what book he was looking for. But he was already gone. The shop had quieted by late evening. Only a few stragglers remained, browsing slowly as the sun dipped beyond the old buildings outside. Mr. Daly sat behind the counter, sipping lukewarm coffee and half watching the dusty television mounted in the corner above the register. It usually played local news, sometimes sports. Tonight, it was tuned to the city's evening broadcast. And now, A look at the mayor's Youth Promise initiative, which just awarded scholarships to over a dozen local students for academic achievement and community leadership. The anchor's voice was smooth, polished. The camera cut to footage from a recent ceremony at City Hall. A group of students in formal wear stood on stage, posing with oversized certificates and smiling city officials. Among them, Jalen. Mr. Daly's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. There he was, the same kid in the hoodie, now in a navy blue suit, smiling graciously as Mayor Harold Green placed a hand on his shoulder. The caption read, "Jalen Green, award recipient and son of Mayor Green." The screen showed a brief clip of the mayor speaking. "Jalen is one of our city's brightest minds and biggest hearts. As a father, I'm proud. As a mayor, I'm hopeful." The audience applauded. Mr. Daly didn't move. He stared at the screen, blinking slowly as the realization bloomed across his face. That boy. The one he had turned away. The one he hadn't let speak. The one he'd seen not as a customer, but as a threat. Was the mayor's son. Daly stood slowly, gripping the edge of the counter for balance. The bookstore suddenly felt colder. Smaller. And behind him, Maya had stopped mid-shelving. She was watching the TV too, silent, arms crossed tightly across her chest. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The television kept playing. But the real broadcast had already happened, at his door, hours ago. And he had changed the channel. By morning, the internet had done what it always does, turned silence into a storm. It started with a single tweet from Priya, the student who had witnessed everything inside Daly's book nook. She hadn't meant to stir trouble, just to say what she saw. Watched a local bookstore owner lock the door on a black teen yesterday. Said he didn't trust kids like that around his shop. Turns out that kid is the mayor's son. Let that sink in. Hashtag Jalen Green. Hashtag this is racism. Attached was a blurry but clear enough photo, Jalen at the door, Daly's hand on the glass. By noon, the tweet had over 40,000 likes. By 2 p.m., the mayor's communications office had been tagged hundreds of times. And by sunset, national outlets were calling it what it was. A local story about race, power, and the assumptions made in seconds. Inside the shop, Daly tried to pretend everything was normal. He kept his head down. He reorganized shelves that didn't need organizing. But the foot traffic was thinner than usual. And the looks from customers were sharper. At 11:15 a.m., a reporter from Channel 6 knocked on the door. He ignored it. At 1 p.m., someone had taped a handwritten sign to the glass. "All kids deserve a chance, even the ones you can't see properly." Daly ripped it down. But it didn't stop. Online reviews turned brutal. Former customers shared quiet stories, being watched too closely, asked too many questions. Maya read every one, her phone lighting up beside her register. She hadn't said anything publicly. Not yet. But she was thinking about it. At 3:30 p.m., the bell above the door rang. A woman stepped inside, well-dressed, calm, with sharp eyes and a leather handbag. She walked up to the counter and said, "Is this where you turned my son away?" Daly didn't need to ask who she was. He swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am," he said quietly. "I didn't know." "I know you didn't," she interrupted. "That's the point." She didn't stay. She didn't have to. Because now, everyone else was watching the door he had once closed. And wondering how many times it had happened before. The morning was gray, overcast, and unusually quiet in the shop. Daly was behind the counter, sipping bitter coffee that had long gone cold, pretending to read the spine of a hardcover he'd shelved a dozen times before. The usual background noise of the store, soft conversations, the gentle thumbing of pages, Maya's tapping on the register, was gone. Even Maya wasn't there. She'd called in sick. He knew better than to ask why. And then, without fanfare, the door opened. No bell. No camera crew. No security detail. Just Mayor Harold Green, standing in the doorway, tall, composed, wearing a charcoal gray coat and quiet authority. Beside him was Jalen. He wasn't in a suit this time. No press. No fanfare. Just the same calm boy in a navy hoodie and jeans, like the day he'd been turned away. Daly straightened so quickly his chair bumped into the shelves behind him. "Mayor Green," he said, his voice scraping for steadiness. I want to say." The mayor held up a hand. "Mr. Daly, this isn't about what you want to say. It's about what you didn't let happen. Daly opened his mouth, then shut it again. Jalen stepped forward, eyes steady. He held the same reading list, now unfolded, creased, but clean. I came here to find books for class. That was it. You didn't ask my name. Didn't ask what I needed. Just said I shouldn't be here. Daly's shoulders sagged. I didn't know. That I was the mayor's son? Jalen said, calm but cutting. Would it have mattered? Daly said nothing. The mayor stepped forward. My son shouldn't have to carry a title to be treated like a human being. No child should. You didn't just deny him a book. You made a choice, based on a face. There was a long pause. Behind them, a few curious passers-by had slowed, watching through the windows but not entering. The store, once known for its charm, now carried the heavy silence of reckoning. Jalen folded the paper back into his pocket. I've already found the books, he said. Another shop had them. They were happy to help. He turned to go. The mayor followed. But before stepping outside, Jalen looked back once, and said with the weight of someone twice his age. You closed the door on more than just a customer. And then he left it open behind him. It had been 3 days since the mayor's visit, and the weight of the encounter lingered in the bookstore like a thick, unspoken fog. Fewer people walked through the door now, and those who did came with measured stares and short tempers. The phone rang less. Orders stopped arriving. But something else had changed, too, something less visible than revenue and reviews. Maya returned to work on Friday afternoon. She arrived in her oversized hoodie, face neutral, earbuds in, but not playing music. She didn't greet Daly at the counter. She just walked past him, grabbed a clipboard, and headed toward the back. Daly watched her go, his mouth halfway open. He had prepared a speech. Apologies. Something about misunderstanding. But Maya didn't give him the space for it. And he didn't earn it. At 2 p.m., the bell rang. It was Priya, the student whose tweet had started it all. She didn't come in to shop. She didn't even approach the shelves. She walked straight to the counter and placed a printed flyer down on the glass. Daly looked at it. It was an announcement. Read in for justice, this Saturday at City Plaza. Everyone welcome. Bring a book. Bring your voice. Below that was a list of speakers, students, librarians, teachers. And one name that stood out. Jalen Green. We're taking stories back where they belong, Priya said quietly. In the open. Not behind locked doors. She left without waiting for a response. Later that night, as Maya was closing up, she paused by the front window. Her reflection stared back at her in the dark glass, young, tired, but steady. She walked to the back, gathered her bag, and left a small note taped near the register before heading out. Daly wouldn't see it until morning. It said, "This place is full of words, but none of them made you see what mattered." She didn't come in the next day. Instead, Maya sat beside Jalen in the plaza, a book in her lap, her voice finally outside the walls that tried to contain it. Saturday morning dawned with quiet anticipation. Folding chairs lined the edges of City Plaza, set up beneath a row of oak trees whose golden leaves fluttered gently in the breeze. A small stage had been built near the fountain, and volunteers placed books on the edges: Morrison, Baldwin, Angelou, Coates. People came in slowly at first. Then in waves. By 11 a.m., over 200 people had gathered: students, teachers, families, passers-by. Some brought signs. Others brought books. All brought attention. At the edge of the plaza, Maya stood beside Priya, holding a canvas tote filled with worn paperbacks. When she saw Jalen arrive, she smiled, not as an employee, not as someone watching the news, but as someone who knew what strength looked like when it was silent. Jalen walked through the crowd calmly, respectfully. He wore jeans and a button-down, the same folded reading list tucked in his back pocket, a symbol now, more than an assignment. When he stepped up to the microphone, there was no roar, just a wave of intent listening. The kind reserved for truth. He adjusted the mic. Cleared his throat. My name is Jalen Green, he began. I'm a student. I'm a son. I'm a reader. And last week, I wasn't allowed into a bookstore. A pause. Not because I did anything wrong. But because I looked like someone who might. He let the silence speak. I'm not here to cancel anyone, he continued. I'm here to challenge something bigger than one store, the idea that your value can be judged at the door. That trust is something you have to look a certain way to earn. He looked up at the crowd. Dozens nodded. A few wiped tears. There are more doors out there. To schools. To jobs. To dreams. And we all deserve to walk through them without someone deciding we don't belong. Then he smiled, gently, powerfully. If the door is locked, speak louder. If the door is shut, write your own story. But whatever you do, don't stop knocking. The applause wasn't thunderous. It was honest. Later that afternoon, someone taped a new sign on the door of Daly's book nook, handwritten in black marker. Books belong to everyone. So do chances. Daly didn't take it down. Not this time. And inside, the door, for once, stayed open.